Sorry, just had a coffee and fit just as the video was about to start. So welcome back to the regular viewers. I can see a lot of guys on there already and girls. So we'll kick off with this evening's session, which is talking about tuning, mapping, ECUs, ECU capabilities, questions and answers along those things. So if you've got any questions related to that, fire away in the live chat. If you could put a Q at the start of it, that'd be really helpful, because then I can star it and make sure that I come back to it. I've had some questions beforehand, which I'll go through to start, just while I'm waiting for everyone else to sort of put the questions in the live chat. Obviously, get your questions in early, because that way I've got a good chance of seeing them. And we'll try and keep this to an hour, because I haven't had my dinner yet. I've only just got back. Super croaky after a day on the dyno with nitrous and methanol, and yeah, exciting day. The nitrous car that was in one of the last videos, we got the plugs in there and changed the manifold over, and that made 641 in the end, so that was really good. Right, okay, so we are talking about tuning. So if I go into some questions to start with, first question is from Steve King. And I'm going to read these out, because I know that a lot of people listen to this rather than looking at my ugly mug for an hour. So Steve asked, could I ask your opinion or experience with ECUEDIT Connect? I've been contemplating one for my 2007 Forester Crossport for code reading and monitoring pressures and temperatures. I've used ECU Connect on my Forester STI. Works really nicely. But I am an Ecutech dealer, but I think it's quite expensive as a tool, and there's not a lot of flexibility for designing dashboards that are particularly useful. And on the Forester Crossport and the Forester SCI, you can't use it for map switching. There isn't enough size in the ROM to do that, so you're not even getting the extra benefits from the software like you would on a hatchback STI, for example, where you could switch maps or change the launch control or those kind of things. But I do have an alternative, which is something that I have used as well. If I just switch that on, which is something called Real Dash. Bit of software. It's virtually free. I think it's a few pounds, few dollars. Uses a Bluetooth dongle, the same as ECUEDIT Connect. Obviously not the ECUEDIT Connect branded one, but any cheap one that you can buy off Amazon will work with this. Or you can run it with aftermarket ECUs like ECU Master, Link G4 Plus. It doesn't work on the G4X, and loads of different ECUs. Go on their website, which is at the top here, realdash.net, and you'll be able to see what the capabilities are, what the drawbacks are. There are many different kind of dashes that you can either use a standard one or use a premium one where you're paying a few pounds extra for. I've used this one here, which worked really well on my old Forester STI. I had that plugged in from the Link G4 Plus straight into an Android head unit in the car, and it was lovely. I had gauges when I wanted them, and if I didn't want the gauges, then I had the stereo going. Great bit of software, available on Android or Apple. So hopefully that answers that question. ECUEDIT Connect is great for the later cars where you're using it for map switching and those kind of things, but for the Foresters I probably wouldn't. Right, Benjamin, not a problem. Everyone has busy lives. Right, okay. Right, can you run Mafless? Right, I'll cover that in a moment. Right, okay, next question from Steve. With regards to top mount intercoolers, standard and aftermarket capabilities, when do you need a front mount, and is it better to stick with a top mount for less turbo lag, or does the extra cooling of a front mount, is that worth it? If you overlaid the power graphs of front mount versus top mount, there would be no part of that graph that would be less with a front mount, but because of the extra piping there is a slight, probably unnoticeable delay in the boost coming on, just because it's got to fill the pipe work up with air. Standard top mounts, it's in the wrong position, to be honest. You know, it's always in the wrong position. It's over the top of a nice hot engine, so they're always going to suffer from heat soak, and you'll always make less power with a top mount than you will with a front mount. Where that crossover isn't really a hard and fast law. You know, on my Forester STI I got 450 horsepower on a top mount, but to do that I had to put a 500 horsepower turbo on and accept that it's not running quite as efficiently as it should be, because the top mount can't get rid of the heat quite so well. The standard STI new age top mount will cope with quite a lot, but beyond 350 it starts to struggle to get rid of the heat that a turbo will generate. So if you can put a front mount on there, it will always be better, it will always be safer. But you know, on my own Forester STI I didn't want to cut the bumper up to get a front mount in there, and on the Forester there is such a small gap at the front for a front mount to actually suck air in, that it didn't seem worth it for me, and my target was 450. It made 448 if you want to be picky about it. So yeah, Steve, on yours, yeah, front mount would work better, but you've got the same issue with your Forester. You have to take huge chunks out of the bumper to do it. Right. Right, okay. So let's pick up a couple of these questions that are coming in. Right, Kev, right, how do you know when your map sensor or 4-bar is going or gone bad running Mafless? You should be able to see just when the ignition's on, it should be showing what the atmospheric pressure is, so around 1000 millibars. On boost it should be a nice steady pressure reading. If you data log it and make sure that it matches what an external gauge is showing you, then that's probably the best way to do it. But they tend to underread when they go bad, and I've seen several that go bad, but they're bad everywhere, so you don't need to take it fully on boost. You'll find that it'll have trouble idling or even starting in some cases. Right. Okay, Benjamin, can you run Mafless on a stock ECU on either an 05 or 07 UK WRXs? On the 05, like a blob-eye WRX, yes, you can do Carberry ROM on that, no problem. On the drive-by-wire Hawkeye 07 WRX, there are modified ROMs available that will allow you to run Mafless, but it depends on what your motivation is to run Mafless. The MAF sensors are very reliable. They're every bit as reliable as the map sensor. So if it's to get rid of a MAF sensor issue, then yeah. But if it's working perfectly well, then I would say keep it on the MAF-based system if you can. But a lot of the time on the speed density ROMs, there are some extra toys in there. So yes and no for the answer on that one. Right. Any other questions in there at the moment? Right, here's another ECU thing. Yes, I believe you can, Fred. On the older 16-bit ECU using Carberry, you can run a flex fuel system. I'm not sure about the TGV wiring. I've only done a couple of these that are using the standard ECU with flex fuel. Normally with flex fuel I go down the route of an aftermarket ECU because the control's better and it's much more flexible, but I'm sure it can. Right, okay, let's have that one on there. Luna TL, right, I presume you mean a European domestic market Forester XT. For logging purposes I use ROM Radar, but it has very few available parameters. No advanced parameters available, no learning view. How do I get proper ECU definitions? It may not be the ECU definitions, it may be the software itself, but I use ECUEDIT and I use the ECU Flash definitions, and they bring up everything that I could need. Is there anything in particular that you're looking to log that you're not seeing at the moment? Right, Cool, loads of questions coming in. Right, quick question from Doug. Question: if I go aftermarket ECU, do I lose my key code and alarm? No, not in my experience. Tyvex, Link, Haltech, Alcatech. Key code is a separate immobiliser, so that still works. Right, okay. Singleton 895. Right. Question: in the UK, I found that mappers don't really want to get involved with mine at 550 horsepower with a standard ECU. But what's the difference? Basically, at that sort of power level, the standard ECU really starts fighting you as a mapper, and it's very difficult to get consistent runs back to back. You could be one moment you could be at 11.5 AFR and everything's peachy, and the next moment you're at 12:1 AFR and it's not happy. Very fine differences in MAF curves can make a massive difference to the map, and there isn't the definition within the map to actually cope with those things comfortably. It is possible. I tuned mine to that sort of level. I think it was a bit more than that, about 580 on the standard ECU, before I eventually bit the bullet and went across to Civex, or Solaris as it was back in the day. And it's so much better and easier and consistent on an aftermarket ECU. So yeah, you can do it at 550, and I wouldn't have a problem with getting involved with that. But it's it really starts fighting you. That's the only thing I would say on that. Right. ECU Master, yeah, I've heard good things about ECU Master recently, and they've got some really nice add-on bits that are reasonably priced as well. They're based in the UK, yeah, and I know the guy from years ago, so I may well be giving him a call and trying to get up there and do an in-depth on that, which might be worth waiting on for, Doug. Right. Okay. Blimey, so many questions. This is cool. Right. Let's go back to some of the original questions that I had. Question from Doug. Doug's one of our Academy members and has always got a load of questions, which is fabulous. I was going to leave this for the Academy, but it's useful for other people to know as well. If you're interested in joining the Academy, then there is a link under pretty much every video that says join. If you click on there, then it'll give you various options. But when the ECU, the data logging says there's been some fine learning, so it's learned to take out a little bit of ignition timing to protect the engine. So when fine knock says that we're seeing an issue, e.g. it's taken out 1.4 degrees at 6,800 RPM at 2.3 load, do we reduce that cell, that ignition table cell, by that amount, or do we add half a degree to it? So in that case, sort of taking out 2 degrees on that cell. And there was another part of this question, which was, do we then blend the cells around it? Yes, always blend the cells around it, but I would personally, I would say if 1.4 degrees was enough to control the knock, or what it has seen as knock, then I would try taking out 1 degree around a few cells there, just to keep it smooth, and see whether it still makes any corrections, because quite often you'll find that taking out 1 degree will be enough to keep it clean. The ECU will, as a minimum, take out 1.4 degrees, so that's its starting point. So it might have only just heard the start of detonation. Right. Okay, let's go back to some questions here. Right. Sorry, word is spreading about my quality. I'm probably the only person that answers these sort of questions. I'm not sure that anyone else in the Subaru tuning world does this kind of thing, but if you know of anyone, then please let me know, because it's very difficult to figure out what people want to ask until they're given an open format. I know the sort of questions that I get bombarded with every day, all day, every day. So I try and cover the topics that are useful to kind of head off some of those questions. Right. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, crikey. Right. Right, talk amongst yourself for a second. Right. Okay. So up to date with those. So I'll just flash this up. Lauren, what do you mean by AWIC? Is that the water-cooled intercooler? Okay. When the Subaru 2005 PPP was brand new, did the dealer put the Prodrive map on, or did Prodrive just supply already mapped ECUs? In the early days, they supplied already. There were a piggyback onto the ECU, which is basically an interrupt in the map sensor signal. So if you've got a 2000 or 2001 Prodrive WRX, there was a little piggyback chip on there. So if you're data logging it, you'll see that the map sensor signal going up and down, and you never get a clear map sensor signal. It basically says ignore all the boost control, run all the boost that you can. It just never hits the boost cut, never hits the boost target. So they controlled it effectively using the maximum wastegate duty tables. For the later cars, I believe it was a dealer fit, but I stand to be corrected on that. But it was a complete waste of money, in my opinion. Not a very good map, and an awful lot of money. I think it was about £1,700 in the UK for the PPP, for a flash map and a silicon turbo outlet hose. They didn't even change the fuel pump on those. Right. Question part 2, Mafless or MAF more reliable? Most manufacturers use a MAF, and they're not building unreliable cars. It's just the MAF is better at coping with the general day-to-day sort of driving that people do. They are really reliable, apart from the 99-2000 ones, which really don't like any kind of oil, don't like being run at high voltages, and they just pop for fun, and they're bloody expensive. The map sensors have issues as well. I see a lot of those that die. I wouldn't say one or the other was more reliable, to be honest. Okay. Right, Singleton, talking about standard ECU capabilities of a new age STI as in USA Cobb tuning for a standard 2017 STI ECU has been documented by Cobb themselves to have made 1100 horsepower. Yeah, but they can't do that now because all the smog testing and the fact that Cobb have removed an awful lot of the capabilities from their software. You can do it, but it, like I said, it really starts to fight you. And from a driving point of view, it is so much smoother with an ECU that is designed to do the job that you're asking it to do. Not only that, you get much more safety parameters with an aftermarket ECU, so you can log oil pressure. So if you're seeing an oil pressure drop, you can put the car into limp mode. Talking from a Cyvex point of view, so oil pressure trips, so it will you put in a minimum target for oil pressure, and if it drops below that at any particular revs, then it will put it into limp mode or stop the engine if you've got an oil pressure problem. Do the same with oil temperature. You can do the same with fuel pressure. You can run a full wideband so it's controlling fueling right the way across the board, on boost, off boost, everywhere. Which, all of those things, you can do some of them with the aftermarket software versions of the standard ECU, but you start losing some of the control that you would get with an aftermarket ECU, and certainly from a smoothness point of view, I think even if you made no more power, the aftermarket ECU is designed to do the job that you're asking it, so it's going to be better. Right, I've had a few people ask this. Alberto Garcia, does your company do ECUTech custom remote e-tuning? I don't do remote tuning, but that's one of the reasons why I started the academy side of things. Not because I'm going to teach everyone to be the perfect mapper, but when I first started mapping, there was no one to actually ask stupid questions to, and whenever I asked established mappers, the standard response that I would get was, "Oh, ask your mapper," and it's like, so what I wanted to do with the academy was just make a place where I can put forward some of my experience, answer questions, but hopefully to build a community that is kind of like a self-help community where you're not on your own mapping your own car, but there's a group, and hopefully we can all help each other out. And I don't mean to do the salesy thing for the academy. If you want to learn to map your car, then fantastic, I'll help you. If you don't, then remote tuning is really difficult, because you've got to have someone on the ground there with deck cams knowing what they're listening to. You've got to have someone there with wideband and knowing what to do when things aren't going right. I don't know how a lot of the tuners in the States do it with remote tuning, because seeing data or sending a map over and then asking someone to do some power runs when things could be on the verge of grenading, I think is scary, really scary. I do it with with TeamViewer and with Cyvex or with Link remotely. That's a lot more straightforward, particularly if I've set the car up in the first place, so I know what the settings are. But on a remote tune for a car that I don't know is so difficult and so dangerous, in my opinion. But join the academy. Right? It's it's growing. It's new, and it can be whatever people need it to be. Oh yeah, another question. Yeah, there should be a link, a link down below. Right. From Lynn Livingstone, I think that's actually Mark, isn't it? Question: realistic power I could get from a standard EJ205 2003 WRX with a full decap, bigger injectors, front mount, and an Andy Forrest TD05 20G. Andy built some really nice 20G turbos back in the day, but that could be, essentially it could be a 20-year-old turbo now. The turbo potential was about 400 horsepower on that sort of setup. If it's a full 3-inch decap, then yeah, I would expect you to be very close to that 400. If it's a 2.5, then maybe 370 to 380. Right, Mr. Impreza recently purchased a version 1 from Bournemouth, tuned by me. I think this was Paul Thompson's car. Maybe. Hunt's on idle at the moment. It's Mafless. Yeah, clean the PCV and it's better. Gets better when warmer. Drop me an email and let me know where you are, and we'll sort something out. I'm sure it's solvable, whatever it is. Right. Okay, here's a question from Freddie. Right, Freddie Brown. Is a 2.1 stroker build better than just a normal forged engine? If so, why? 2.1 will give you more torque. It's not going to give you any more power. It's just going to shift the peak power a little bit earlier in the rev range. But it depends on what you mean by better. Better reliability, it should be no different. It depends what your definition of better is, really. If you're looking for like a super reliable engine, then either will be good. If it's less than 500 horsepower, then just a standard out of the box Subaru thick wall JDM block would be just as good, if not better, in my opinion. Right, how are we doing with live chat? Right. Okay, yeah, it is Paul's car, right. Yeah, drop me an email or a text or a Facebook message or WhatsApp, whatever. There's a million ways to get hold of me, and we'll sort something out. Not a problem. Right, is the 04 STI knock sensor good and reliable to tune with? Yes, it is. Depends on what ECU that's listening to the knock sensor, but yes, it's certainly good enough. The 04 STI that I tuned today to 640 was still running the standard knock sensor through a Cyvex ECU with flex fuel nitrous control, but it's able to control and listen and do exactly what it needs to do to protect everything. Would you have a price range to supply and fit a Cyvex to a Hawk STI? Email me, tell me the spec that you're looking for, and I'll let you know what the costs are on that. Right, crikey. I'll put this up. Yeah, thank you. Good to have you here. All right, Freddie, what was that? Right. Right. Okay, Lauren, any comments on water-cooled intercooler? They use them a lot on the legacies. On I think it was like a version 1 legacy. Sorry if I'm late, if you've already mentioned it. In my car, since engine is in the back, I'm struggling to get good top mount airflow. Yeah, they work well-ish. I tune a VW Beetle that's got a Subaru engine in the back, and he's got water cooler on there. with a separate pot that he runs in the car that he fills with ice. But it's a quarter-mile car, so it's only got to take the heat out of the air for like 9 seconds, I think his runs are. Works well for that. It stabilizes the temperature gains and losses, but it's never as good as a front mount intercooler. But on your car, it would probably work pretty well if you can mount the radiator at the front. Then it would be good. But at the back, water cooler at the back, it's gonna be stable, but maybe an airflow thing would be a better way to do it. I think in your case, Lauren, I think I'd try a solution involving an air cooler rather than water. Right, E10 fuel on stock Scoobies, good or bad, worth spending on boosters. Well, the Bug and Blob, and yeah, the Bug and Blob WRXs were mapped for 95 anyway. I think it even says in the petrol cap on those. But E10, it doesn't tell me what the octane rating is. You know, E10 in the UK is 95 RON and E5 is 99. In Europe, it's the other way round. So E5 is 95 RON and E10 is 98. So the E10, if it's in the UK, I would say it would benefit from being mapped for it. Boosters, if you rely on the boosters, then you're kind of married to using the boosters all the time. Like if you're using octane boosters or that kind of stuff, I would say if you want to run it on E10, run it on E10, but get it mapped, or at least the map checked. Make sure it's not going to blow the engine up, because that will be a little bit of a false economy. Carberry ROM is Mafless, so if you're going to go down that route for launch control and flat shifting and anti-lag, well, sort of anti-lag, pops and bangs really, then you'd be doing it on a Mafless basis. It won't use the MAF. It has like a translation table that eradicates the need for it. ECUEDIT is free for login. I don't think it is. But there is a cheap version for login. I don't know off the top of my head, but if you go to epifansoft.com, there's a link in one of the descriptions. I'll try and remember to put it in the description below this one. Right. Okay. Right, Fred. Question: radium fuel hanger with dual Walbro 450s and ID 1700 injectors with an FB blue turbo. Will I have a problem with idle and cruise fuel stumble? Looking for 400 horsepower. They're massive injectors for 400 horsepower. The problem with ID 1700s is what ECU is this on, Fred? The problem with the ID 1700s injectors is just the minimum opening time. The spray pattern I think is very good. On mine I ran ID 2000 injectors and it idled perfectly at 2000. That was with some I think there were 285 cams that I had in there, some Kelford cams, and it was still fine for idling and cruise, but I think that's massive overkill for 400 horsepower, Fred. you know, with that sort of spec, ID 1000s are good for maybe 1200 horsepower. Dual Walbro 450s, probably similar horsepower, probably 1000. Yeah, for 400 you could do that on a set of 550 injectors. Fuel pressure rate, just up the pressure a little bit. Right, right, yeah. On my version 5, went through 6 maths in 3 months. Yeah, it's what they do. If you're running a 99 2000, then aftermarket ECU I would thoroughly recommend. It will pay for itself in no time at all. Yeah, the problem there is the high voltage when you're running a slightly tuned car. If you get anywhere close to the maximum voltage that MAF sensor wants to read, then it just pops, and at that point it runs like a bag of nails. It's horrible. Right, question from Rob: is it worth having an aftermarket ECU at my power level, e.g. 410 horsepower? You're probably not going to gain anything from a power point of view. You might gain things from smoothness and consistency and extra toys. It's whether those features, those toys, or the smoothness and the safety are worth it for you, and it depends on the car as to how much the cost is going to be as well. But yeah, I think it's always worth it. I've put aftermarket ECUs in cars that are running reasonably standard power, sort of 320, 330. Okay. Alright, let's have that. Right, Fred, that was on a 16-bit 04 STI. Yeah, I think those injectors are too big. Personally, you're going to be running probably less than 40% duty at full boost all the way through that. So you're losing the ability to control the low end of it. 650s, 750s at the most would be my recommendation. Right. Okay, best stock WRX to start with for track is good deal on Blob or Hawk. Blob Eye. The Hawk, like the 2.5 is great for torque on the road, but on track the 2 litre gives you more top end and is a stronger engine. So I'd say stock WRX would be a Blob Eye. Right, let's put that. Right, I'm definitely going to go into that one. Right, DK. Ignored what? Was there a question a bit further up? I can't see it. Right, okay, let's go through some other ones. Right, from Andrew, turbo inlet sizes, standard versus 3-inch inlet, stock location turbo. It depends on the inlet size of the turbo. Too big and you can get the a lot more surge on the turbo, but it depends on the turbo, to be honest, and the power that you're trying to get to. Right. Right. In Norway, the attorneys have started checking cars for tuning. Is there an easy way to put the car in limp mode or a quick way to lower the power for a test or a check? The sneaky little so-and-sos. Quick way, yeah, just join the turbo to the actuator with a bit of straight silicone hose and it'll just be an actuator pressure. So that will lower it. That's probably the easiest way. Anything else that you do, like disconnecting the boost solenoid, it will put it into limp mode, or throw up a code on the screen, which they probably wouldn't like. But if you just put a straight vacuum hose from the turbo vacuum nipple to the wastegate, then it will give you actuator pressure, and that's it. Or alternative to that, where the hose from the boost solenoid goes into the inlet, just put a bolt in that and that will do the same thing. Currently building an Impreza track car with an open deck EJ205. I'm debating doing a refresh with an STI crank, STI rods, or a brand new EJ207 short block. Get the short block. Brand new, don't touch it, don't open it, just bolt your heads on, good to go. Right, a question from Freddie. What was the oil you suggested on another video where you said you had problems with Miller's oils? Currently use Mobil 1. From my experience, Mobil 1 tends to disappear. I think it burns somewhere in the engine and just like the oil level goes down. I love Motul 300V 1550, but I'm going to be trialing some new oil soon and I will let everyone know how that goes. Right, news on potential for East Kent Subaru. Yeah, when he's got his dyno, I will be going down there. Yeah. Right, okay. Ben, I'm currently running a SC42 on my Hawk STI, 410 horsepower with a Grimsby top mount. Next year I'd like to fit front mount, just the timing to increase, or would you boost fuel timing? It's 1.45 bar now. You will fit in the front mount, you will get a slight pressure loss, so that 1.45 bar might drop to 1.4 bar just by nature of the bigger intercooler. You should be able to run more than that. Whether it would make more power is debatable, but you could certainly try. But yeah, timing is where you'll get the power, because the air is going to be cooler going to the engine. You'll be able to run probably 3 degrees of extra ignition on that, and you could probably run it a little bit leaner as well. From Lauren, what voltage do you recommend going to a big mouth tube? I think that brings the voltage down. Yes, it does. I've started tuning boost now, and I'm starting to see it in the 4.3, 4.4 volts range. Yeah, not yet, Lauren. Not yet. Soon. It will read fine up to about 4.8 volts on a new age MAF sensor. So you're fine with that. Yeah, I bet that's interesting. Yeah. Right, flat 4. Want some noises on the cheap? Don't judge me. Would have drilled airbox, make it run lean the same way as a cold air induction would. Snorkelotomy is not enough. A4XT. Don't drill the airbox. Have you tried blanking the dump valve off completely? And that way you'll get a lot more noise. Right. Right, okay. I've had a version 1 WRX and a version 2 WRX STI, and did a lot of mods to these, like decat, induction kit, front mount. None of these were ever mapped and never had a problem. Great. But you've now got a 2003 Spec C, and it seems like every mod needs a remap. How is this? Yeah, it isn't more forgiving. The older ECUs, particularly on the version 1, 2s, they were a long way away from being perfect, and the newer ECUs need things to be set up right. Otherwise, on yours, if you're putting a decat exhaust on there, then you're changing the back pressure on the turbo. It will overboost, or at the very least, it will not be a smooth boost. Your fueling might be all over the place. Any changes to the exhaust is changing the way the air comes out of the engine. It will be changing these things. No one's forcing you to get it remapped, but I really would recommend it, because it's a lot cheaper than an engine build. And if you put in modifications onto your car, then why not make them work properly by getting it all set up properly? Right, isn't blanking off the dump valve reset bad for the turbo? Not in my experience. I haven't seen any issues with that at all. It's Mark here. Do you travel up to Scotland to do any mapping? I used to, but it is such a long way. No, I don't. I have people that come down from Scotland to and make a weekend of it in London or West Country or what have you. And yeah, I don't travel up there. It's basically 2 or 3 days out of my life. Right. I'll cut the missus's biscuit tins up and report back. Right, for your dump valve blanks. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I understand that, but what I advise people to do is kind of batch the mods up, so that if you like your JDM STI, bring it into the country, like I did one today. It was a 2013 RA TS, first one of those I've ever seen. straight into the country, map for UK fuel, drive it around, get used to it, see what you like, see what you don't like, and then if you're wanting to take things further, then exhaust, fuel pump, air filter, that kind of thing, and map for those. But you know, beyond that, on a 2003 Spec C, I wouldn't recommend changing turbos. The standard turbo on those is epic. There's not an awful lot to change, but batch up the mods, fit them 2 or 3 days before mapping, so that if you get an issue with fitting, then you've got a bit of time to solve it before mapping, rather than doing it the morning of the mapping. And yeah, all right. Okay, let's go back to some of the questions that I had beforehand. LH and changing cams using big valve heads, is it worth the investment? What are the options for classics from the OEM range? What are the gains and losses? It depends on the power that you're trying to get to, and that's what I would say with that. If it's a version 1, 2, then you can fit later heads on there. You'd need to check on the inlet manifold. You probably need to swap the inlet manifold. The version 5, 6 STI heads are very good. They flow well, but they all have a limit on the standard cams and the standard valves as to what they will flow before they start to suffocate the air going in or out of the engine. Alright, am I up to date with anything? Shout if I haven't answered your question, because we've got the last few minutes now. Yeah, so everything's bad for e-bang turbos. Just spinning is bad for them. Yeah, I have as well. I've never had one go. I think with things like an older VF22, which is like pretty much a 30-year-old turbo, yeah, it's not going to like the stuttering effect of air going back over the blades. But you know, the VF turbos are relatively cheap anyway, and getting rebuilt and made better, it wouldn't be a bad plan anyway. So if it dies, make it better. Yeah, on a Spec C, I think the Spec C with the standard turbo, decat exhaust, top mount intercooler is the perfect road weapon. It is mentally quick to spool up. The car that I did today, it was like 320 horsepower from 4,000 right the way to 8,500. So drivable, so quick. If you got another 50 horsepower by putting a VF 400 on there, what you're losing in the torque or the mid-range, I think actually makes it a slower car. But it depends whether the power that you're using at the top end. If it's a track car or a drag car, then yeah, you need the power at the top end. But for a road car, road weapon for B roads and C roads and whatever, then the Spec C I think is epic. All right. Thomas, have you got? Was there a question further up? God blimey. Oh. Thomas, right. Okay, here we go. Could you explain to us noobs what we would need to start tuning our own cars so that we can join the academy? Laptop, make some deck cans, a wideband, and a Tactrix cable. And depending on the year of your car as to whether you need the little flash block connectors. If it's a 2001 to a 2005, then you'd need the little flash blocks as well. From 2006 onwards, you wouldn't need those. So deck cans, make those. Look at the video that I did on those. Really easy to make, really cheap, work really well. Wideband, either permanently installed in the car or something like an Innovate LM2, but again, permanently wire that in from a power point of view, and the Tatrix, and that's it. But join the academy, and you can get the knowledge up. There we go. Right. Yeah. You know, I started mapping my car 17, 18 years ago, I think it was. It was never going to be a business for me. It was just I had an interest, and I've always taken things apart and then tried to figure how to put them back together. I was computer programming and quite happy doing what I was doing. I've always messed around with cars. I've always been involved with motorsport. And as long as you got an ability to kind of understand what's going on, and hopefully I go through that. But it's a place where people can just ask anything they want, and I'll answer it. I'm not keeping any secrets. I don't want to keep any secrets. I think knowledge needs to be shared. There's too many people in this industry that are very keen to keep their little secrets or to cover up their little issues by locking maps and all those kind of things. I never lock maps. Right. Couple more questions, and then right, best porting the heads if doing the cams. Yeah, but I wouldn't go wild with porting though. I got on mine, on the standard heads, even the standard valves, I got to 650 horsepower quite comfortably. It's just the when you start pushing more than that, then the valve springs need to be stronger, the valve heads need to be stronger, but too much polishing is probably bad because they're not very thick in some areas. Oh, David, what was the question on the wideband? Oh. Yeah, there we go. View on using the analog output from wideband to replace the stock AFR input. Yes, you can, but you need to make sure that the values that the ECU is expecting for a certain voltage relating to an AFR is the same as what your sensor will output. So yes, you can do that, but it's not quite as simple as just saying 0 to 5 volt. Or 0 to 1 volt. So you need to set it up, but I would probably not bother for the work that's involved. I wouldn't bother because it's only using it on a cruise or off boost. Okay, right. Bum, bum, bum. You are... Da-da-dum. Thank you, Paul. I try and help wherever I can. Right. Yep. VF 400 on the Forester STI on Richards made 428, I think it was. It did make 440 Epic, but it was kind of a little bit close to the edge, so I took it back to 428. On a 2.5 it spools up really nicely. and VF400 on Matt's twin scroll made I think that was it might have been 428 as well, and made 470 with meth, which was not bad. Right. Yeah, like I say, when I first started mapping, I had so many questions. ROM Raider forums were useful in a lot of ways, but some people absolutely obsess over the smallest changes to tip-ins and closed loop fuel trims and all the rest of it, and you end up just chasing your tail, going round in circles, ending up exactly where you were to start with. Just let the ECU do what it's designed to do, and then worry about important stuff. Yeah, we could. They're not always the academy sessions that I do at the moment are live sessions this sort of time of night on a Monday night, but they're not necessarily always going to be at that time. So it depends on what the masses. He says, there's not masses of people in there, but it depends on what people want from time zones point of view. But the live streams are always there, and things like log reviews and map reviews can do that sort of outside of the normal sort of time scales. But it's difficult fitting these in, bearing in mind that people are watching this from Australia to Texas and an awful lot of places in between. It's very strange. Hopefully I've answered that for you, Jake. Yeah, but at the moment they're 8 p.m. on a Monday night for the academy. I've been doing live sessions for that just to kind of get the ball rolling, but there will be some pre-recorded ones that I'm doing as well, as soon as time allows on that. But right, okay, thank you very much. I'll call it a day at that. Any questions that occur to you afterwards, pop it in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.